Startup businesses are difficult at the best of times. Our next guest agrees that startups have problems. The good news, he has solutions based on 4 steps that he's created, a strategic plan, if you will, because without a plan, you have failure. Please welcome Todd Miller. He's the president of RT Miller Holdings Incorporated. You're also an executive coach, a professional speaker, an author, an entrepreneur, and what else do you do? Plumbing? You do plumbing, Todd?
That list is exhausting already. Ref hockey.
Oh, there you go. If you don't have a plan in business, regardless if it's a small upstart business or, as you said too, a hobby, forget about it. You're planning for failure.
Yeah, or you're planning for having a successful hobby, possibly.
There you go.
But it's certainly not going to be a business. It's certainly not going to set yourself up for success inside of a small business venture.
A plan is a measurable.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's an achievable set of goals that you've set out for yourself.
Yeah.
And it's a guideline. It's a roadmap of sorts.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, let's think about it from a metaphor perspective. If you're off taking a trip to Disneyland and you're driving there, well, you got to have a map. Even though you generally know the destination, you're going to have a game plan. And no difference in starting a new business up. You want to have a game plan, and that's the 4 steps that we're talking about.
Well, let's get into those 4 steps, because you say without these 4 steps, your plan will fail. Fair?
Fair, yeah. And
go ahead.
Well, and obviously the first step in that process is not to dwell on current state, but to think about future state, or in other words, your desired state. What are we trying to accomplish here? Where are we going with this small business venture? What's the ultimate goal? Get that crystallized and associate with vision and your values, and what's your whole game plan. Know that with clarity. That's step 1 in this whole process.
So the ultimate goal. So give me just an example of an ultimate goal.
Well, I heard your previous guest. They obviously had an ultimate goal. They wanted to be a reggae band, and they wanted to go on tour. And although they maybe didn't definitively lay out that plan, they certainly had vision, they had passion, they had a desired state that they were going after. The second step in that process is, well, why aren't you doing it? What's in your way?
But that first one, again, just go back to the first one, the desired state. So can this be a lofty, hairy-fairy goal? I mean, or does it have to be something that after, let's say, a certain time period, I should be able to measure this goal?
No, absolutely. Look, it can be as grandiose as you want to make it. I think it has to be tangible, and that's where, when you go through the full 4-step exercise, you'll find out how lofty it is and whether it's reachable. But clearly, from the get-go, it has to be filled with passion. Now, I'm a guy that would generally say to you, look, to go beyond 3 years is a real challenge, and I've never, even as in the years that I've with large organizations, the 5-year planning exercise, year 1 is pretty good, year 2 is okay, year 3 starts to be plus 10%, and once you get beyond that, I get a little foggy. But so I would encourage small business operators to start with that 1-year view.
You can follow along, by the way. Just go to #StartUpAdvice. Step number 2 is dealing with obstacles. Anytime you have a plan, well, of course, you're going to run into pitfalls, or, as you say, obstacles.
Yeah, well, in many cases, the obstacles are coming from external sources. I mean, how often do I hear this story where, I want to do something and everyone around me tells me I can't do it? And they're the ones that will generally give you the obstacles. They're the ones that will give you the headlines of why this is going to fail or why this is not going to work for you. And that's fine. Bring it on. I want to hear them all. And I want to hear them in headline format. So in other words, I don't want to get bogged into the details right now. I'm set on my desired state. I know where I want to get to in a longer period of time, or perhaps even a year. And there are a few things that are in my way. What are those things? It could be capital. It could be competition. It could be understanding my marketplace. It could be staff. I mean, there's a whole host of things that might be in my way. But step 2 is simply identify them. What are they?
Right. Because if you do identify them, then you don't have any surprises later down the road.
No surprises, plus it'll set up you for success for step 3, which is how
specific
do I overcome?
Actions.
Yes.
Yes.
So and here's where we get bogged down, Phoenix. I mean, this is where one of the issues comes into play, is that we hear about an obstacle, and then we just dwell on the obstacle, and we dwell on the obstacle as it relates to desired state. Well, my comment to you would be, forget about that for a moment and zero in almost in a vertical, if you will. What is the obstacle? And let's just talk about the actions to overcome that obstacle. It becomes daunting when we start thinking about, oh, there's so many obstacles, there's so many issues in front of me, I'll never get there. And of course, that's setting yourself up for failure.
And the 4th step in your 4-step plan is key performance indicators.
Yeah, well, you got to have measurements, right? You got to have a headlight view. I mean, there's a difference between, leading indicators and lagging indicators. I'm a big believer in having leading indicators, understanding what that headlight view is for you. And those key performance indicators are going to help make sure that you're on track. So in other words, if we're driving along the highway and we have we got to check the fuel gauge in our vehicle to make sure that we've got enough fuel to get us to our destination. What are those indicators in your pursuit of your desired state?
Some great advice, 4 key steps. Todd Miller is the president of RT Miller Holdings Incorporated. He's an executive coach, professional speaker, author, entrepreneur, and yes, he does clean toilets as well, right?
Sure.
Sometimes. Todd, thank you very much.
Thanks
Great
for
stuff.
having me. Thanks.
There's a lot of things happening in and around our city, including the 5th annual Calgary Organ Festival and Symposium. It runs now right through until Sunday. The festival is under the leadership of principal host Mount Royal University. If you'd like more information, there's the information on your screen at www.mountmtroyal.ca. This is Trending on Shaw. Kate, Todd. Todd?